Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, for today and for Tuesday and Wednesday, evidence will be led in the Denel work stream. The head of that stream is Ms. Kataki, and she is assisted by Ms. Cortelesi. The first witness, Mr. Takuri, is present before you.
Thank you. Thank you. For what is well. So we can just confirm that for this week we are really dealing with Denel, and on Friday there might be a witness that has nothing to do with Denel, Mr. Palula. So other than that, we will be dealing with Denel.
Yes, so there may be some applications before you on Friday, but we're processing those at the moment.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Mr. Rashid.
Good morning, DCJ, and thank you.
Good morning.
DCJ, before I start, it might be prudent for Mr. Libala to place himself on record.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
As it pleases Chairperson, we appear for Ms. Lynette Brown, the former Executive Political Head of the Department of Public Enterprise. We've already placed ourselves on record.
Yes.
I appear with my colleague, Mr. Welcome Lusenga.
Yes.
We briefly mentioned some overlapping concerns that will be taken care of by the process as it unfolds.
Yes. Yes.
We assure you and undertake to make it a point that on or before Wednesday,
Yes.
2 responding statements dealing with the witnesses that the Commission would be focusing on, to be
Yes.
specific, Ms. Janse van Rensbeck and Mr. Saluji will be presented to the Commission, together with an application for condonation.
Okay. No,
The
thank you.
other statement will be here listening to the testimony of Mr. Tlakudi, and will respond accordingly in accordance with the rules of the Commission.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Libala.
As you please, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bashir.
Thank you, DCJ. DCJ, the evidence today that will be taken is that of Mr. Kgathatso Tlakudi, who is currently the DDG, Business Enhancement Services at the Department of Public Enterprises. Just briefly, some introductory comments, DCJ. What triggered the interest in Denel, the Commission's interest, is of course the Public Protector's report, which is dated October 2016 and entitled The State of Capture, which is part of this Commission's record of reports. The then Public Protector had regard to allegations in the media and from other sources regarding governance-related matters, the involvement of the Gupta and or other associates of the Guptas in the establishment of VR Leisure Asia and Denel Asia, and the basis on which 3 key members of Denel's ExCo were suspended and ultimately relieved of their duties in or around September, end of September 2015. For your ease of reference, DCJ, Mr. Tlakudi will be dealing with all of these governance and related matters because he was part of that decision-making process as an employee of the Department of Public Enterprises. So in essence, DCJ, the testimony today deals with term of reference 1.1 and 1.4, and it actually also touches on term of reference 1.3. The terms of reference, DCJ, for completeness sake, term of reference 1.1 requires the Commission to inter alia inquire whether, and if so, to what extent, relevant legislation, policies, and guidelines were subverted by those who are alleged to have made attempts through any form of inducement or for any gain whatsoever to influence members of the National Executive, and this includes deputy ministers, office bearers, functionaries of any of the state institutions, organs of state, and of course, Denel falls into this bracket. Term of reference 1.4 requires this commission to investigate, and I quote, whether the president or any member of the present or previous members of his national executive, and again including deputy ministers, or public officials, employees of the state-owned entities, breached or violated the Constitution or any relevant ethical code or legislation by facilitating, and I underline facilitating, Chairman, the unlawful awarding of tenders by SOEs or any organ of state to benefit the Gupta family or any other family, individual or corporate entity doing business with government or any organ of state. From the totality of the evidence that will be led this week, Chairman, and as we have indicated in your chambers, we have one witness today. There are two witnesses who will give evidence tomorrow, and there will be one more who will give evidence on Wednesday. From the totality of their evidence, Chairman, it may be that the evidence will fall within the parameters of 1.3, whether directly or inferentially. I underline the inferential evidence that you may deduct at the end of the day from what they have to say, DCJ, because term of reference 1.3 requires this commission to investigate, and I will quote, whether the appointment of any member of the National Executive, functionary, and office bearer was disclosed to the Gupta family or any other unauthorized person before such appointments were formally made and or announced, and if so, whether the president or any other member of the National Executive is responsible for such conduct. DCJ, before I take you through the different files, I think it's going to be important. We've tried to label the exhibits differently this time, and we hope that it's going to be a more user-friendly labeling.
It seems to accord with what I've been asking for some time.
Oh, we have Derek De Beer to thank for that, DCJ.
Yes.
He really has put a lot of effort.
Yes.
And of course, we will improve what we have presented
Yes.
as you direct us to.
Yes.
But before I just go through those, DCJ, for your ease of reference, maybe I should ask your registrar to swear in Mr. Tlakudi.
Yes, thank you.
Please state your full name for the record.
My name is Kataki.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No objection.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you say that the evidence you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tlakudi, for your benefit, but also for that of the Chairman, can I take you through the exhibits, the files that are on the desk at which you're sitting? Chairman, for the record, we are on Exhibit W.
Yes.
The exhibits are numbered Exhibit W1 through to Exhibit W5.
Yes.
Exhibit W1 comprises two files which are labeled with the name of the particular witness. This is Mr. Tlakudi.
Yes.
And you have file 1 of 2 and file 2 of 2
Yes.
on the spine of the exhibit. Similarly, tomorrow...
I wonder whether since W1 has got two files, whether it might not be more convenient to have A and B?
We can
or is that
amend...
something you considered?
We had DCJ I think it's only the witness on Wednesday who will also have 2 files.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's witnesses have 1 file each, if I'm not wrong. But whatever is more convenient for you, DCJ, because you are collecting so many files, we are happy to make it easier for you to,
Yes.
to get back to.
I'm just thinking that you see where you've got W2, W3, and it's 1 file. It's quite clean and easy to follow. Where you have got W1, but there are 2 live arch files. So you have to distinguish which one of the 2. And I see you have got file 1, so you might have to say exhibit 1, exhibit W1, file 1. That's another way. It might be fine, maybe we shouldn't be concerned. Otherwise, we could say there is W1A and W1B. So if we refer to it, we just say W1A or W1B. What do you think of that?
I think the A and the B sound simpler.
Sounds better, yeah.
DCJ.
Okay, so let us say exhibit 1 that is marked file 1 of 2. Let us say that will be exhibit 1, capital letter A.
So it's exhibit W1, DCJ.
W1, yes, W1A.
Capital A.
Okay, and then the other one, which is file 2 of 2, it's exhibit W1, capital letter B. So that's how we'll distinguish. Okay, thank you. Otherwise, then all the other exhibits under W that you have already told me about, they are marked as you indicated.
Except for W5, DCJ. W5 is a reference document.
Yes.
In W5 we have, governance documents,
Yes.
transcripts, things like that.
Yes, yes.
It really will be a reference document that all the witnesses will be using between today and Wednesday.
Yes.
But I suggest we also
Yeah, and do the same.
do the same.
Yes.
W5A and W5B is the way we will
Yes.
label that file.
Yes, okay, let's do that. So file 1 of W5 will then be exhibit W5, capital letter A.
Mr. Tlakudi, if you would be so kind as to do the same, even if it's in pencil with the files that you have, just for your ease of reference, we'll correct them properly at tea time, just so you can work your way around the files as well. So it's exhibit W5, file 1 is A, file 2 will be B. And the same with, of course,
And the A and the B, you can just write immediately after W5 or 5. Okay, so, and the file 2 will be W5B, capital letter B.
Mr. Tlakudi, you need to bring W5 quite close to you because we'll be moving from one to the other ever so often.
Okay.
So they need to be within reach, quite frankly. Your primary document, though, is W1A and 1B. That's your primary source of information for this morning. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
So if we look at exhibit W1A, Mr. Tlakudi, you will find that there is a glossary, but the glossary really is more for the ease of reference of the chairman when he reads these bundles much later. For current purposes, I would like you to have a look at page 001. It's labeled KT001. If you keep your finger on 001 and go across to to 035, So you're moving from page 1 to page 35 of the bundle. Can you please explain whose signature that is on page 35?
Maybe before he does that, Mr. Basha, let me just announce formally that so this week from tomorrow, the starting time will be 9:30, and the finishing time will be 4:30, but I may extend that time from day to day depending on the situation, if we need to finish witnesses' evidence. 3, on Friday, however, we will not start at 9:30, we will start at 9 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So we are at page 35, Mr. Tlakudi, and you were about to explain whose signature that is on page 35.
It is my signature.
Yes, thank you. And what's the date on which you signed this document?
I signed it on the 25th of February 2019.
If we go back to page 1, what is the document that you have signed?
The document is a statement that I had put together for this commission.
Yes, thank you. At this point, are there any corrections you wish to make to the statement before we start dealing with the contents?
Yes, there is, Council. If I may refer you to paragraph 68.
May I interrupt you? I know this is my error. You address the chairman all the time. I'm just here to assist. But all your responses are addressed to the chairman.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Chair. Chair, if I may refer you to paragraph 68.
Yes.
On paragraph 68, the third line from the bottom, there is an insertion of a not. They had not, in the original statement as we had put together, that correction was not there. And Chairperson...
So we should delete not.
Not is correct, yes.
Not is correct.
Not is correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, just indicate that we had noted some grammatical errors as we're going through the statement, and
yes.
And this is one material change that I intended to make here.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it was corrected beforehand. So we apologize for that.
Okay.
And then the next paragraph is paragraph in relation to KT2. I'm trying to locate it. If Council can help me out there. I'd written paragraph 70, but I see it is not. That's not the paragraph.
Paragraph 75.
75. 75 has to do with the date that you are referring to there. That would be. That should be 2016. We're saying 16 or 18 February 2018. That should be 2016, Chair.
Thank you.
And we make a reference to Annexure KT2. I'm just trying to locate it. We had...
you can go to paragraph 33 for that one.
All right. Thank you, Council. Paragraph 33, make reference to memorandum, a decision memorandum. That decision memorandum existed at some point. And that's why when I was writing that statement, I had referred to it.
Yes.
And the intention was then to pull it out of our register, registry, and append it here.
Yes.
When we went to look for it, we could not find it.
Okay.
But I know for a fact it existed.
Yes.
And later on, I'm referring to it.
Yes.
That I had signed that
Yes.
particular decision memorandum.
Yes.
What we can do if we are able to locate it
Yes.
after today's evidence here,
Yes.
we can do a supplementary statement
Yes.
Yeah, to include it into record. Thank you.
Yes, no, I think that's fine. And if you don't find it and you reach a point that you simply can't find it, maybe a supplementary affidavit can also be done, which refers to this paragraph and says, how come you refer to an annexure which is not there, and this is what happened. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
So ultimately, for now, we don't make any correction on paragraph 32, subject to the possibility of a supplementary affidavit.
It's paragraph 33, Chairman.
Or 33, I'm sorry, 33, yes. And we didn't make any correction on the other paragraph to which you referred earlier because the note which you thought wasn't there was there.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Tlakudi, can we then go back to the beginning of your statement? And can you just give the Chairman a brief synopsis of your professional profile? You deal with that in paragraphs 1 to about 5 or 6, highlighting your qualifications and how you came to be appointed to the position of DDG at the Department of Public Enterprises.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I hail from the Free State, from Falcom, and I came up here to Johannesburg in 1990. It happened to be the same day that Mandela was released from prison. So I was released from the Free State, so to put it. I studied at the University of Witwatersrand, and I graduated in 1995. I was fortunate to get a bursary to be able to study, and I went on to study for a master's degree in 2003 at the University of Cape Town, and I got a Gatsby scholarship, which is a British institution, which allowed me to also spend time at the University of Cambridge at Wolfson College, where I spent time in the Institute of Manufacturing. And I also had an opportunity to study for an air transportation management diploma with the Royal Aerospace Society in the United Kingdom, located in Oxford. And I have also possess the postgraduate diplomas in program management and systems engineering from the University of Northwest. Chair, I have 24 years working experience, and I happen to have started working at Denel after I graduated. I was in engineering training. I spent 9 years at Denel, where I rose up the ranks. I was a design engineer at some point. I became a project manager, a program manager. So at some point I was trusted with business development responsibilities. And when I left Denel, it was in 2004 when I joined Volkswagen of South Africa in their after-sales business as a field operations manager, responsible for Free State, Northern Cape, Gauteng, Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, Limpopo in South Africa, as well as Botswana and Namibia. I'll say the defense bug had beat me, so to speak, and in 2008, I was handhunted by Armsco to join them as a senior manager responsible for aircraft systems acquisition. This would be the acquisitions of the likes of the Gripens, the Hawks, the Augusta, and other aircraft systems would have been acquired during my time there. And also, I did some work for the South African Police because at some point the AMSCO was responsible for acquiring their aircraft systems.
So
Just
can
one
I,
second.
Yeah.
I take it that everybody can hear at the back? Yes, okay, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Tlakudi, can I then say that by what you've written here, and just in terms of my understanding, you're an engineer by training, you've done management courses, and as you say at paragraph 5 of your statement, you have a very good understanding of the defense and aerospace sector.
That's correct, ma'am.
What is the core business of Denel? Just briefly.
Yeah. Denel is, develops, manufactures, and sells armaments. And this varies from air-based systems. And at some point, Denel manufactured aircraft, the likes of the Cheetahs, the Roy Falk helicopter, which most people are familiar with. Denel is the OEM of those particular systems. Denel also manufactures missile systems. It has a division that is called Denel Dynamics that does that. They produce various calibers of munitions. Small caliber munitions is still with them. Medium and large caliber munitions, these are now deposited in an entity that Denel sold a majority stake to into Rheinmetall of Germany, and I touch on those later on. And they also produce landward systems vehicles, which obviously they have guns mounted on them, so combat vehicles. There's protected vehicles for obviously for safe transportation of personnel in the theater of war. So that's what Denel does, and it sells these various systems locally as well as internationally. At some point, international sales went up to about 60% of the total revenues of Denel. So it's quite a well-known international brand.
Well, maybe this might be the right time, Mr. Washer, for him, if he's able to tell us also the different subsidiaries, if there are any, of Denel, insofar as they may be relevant to evidence later on.
Chairman, what I believe is relevant are the particular entities he had oversight of.
Okay.
Because he then draws
Yes.
parallels between
Yes.
that and Denel.
Okay, no, then he can deal with that, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Chair, if I may, I had oversight over the whole of Denel, including its divisions, its subsidiaries, as well as its indirectly its associate companies.
Then you may as well just inform us
Yeah.
as much as is reasonably possible. Obviously, there might be things that won't come up, but you exercise your judgment in terms of giving us a picture of different important components of Denel by way of subsidiaries or divisions and so on.
Yeah. In relation to my testimony here, it mainly is speaking to the events as they unfolded at corporate level of Denel.
Yes, okay.
But for what I can do is just indicate, and later on also touch on the specific divisions as I speak to them, and also explain what do they do.
Yes.
But Denel has it's about 6 divisions. There's Denel Aerospace, which is located in Kempton Park, which is mainly does the maintenance, repair, and overhaul of air-based systems, both your fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft, helicopters and fixed wing aircraft. And then you have Denel Land Systems, which is located in Centurion, which manufactures landward vehicles, as well as the turrets which are integrated onto these vehicles. Turrets would then carry various systems like your gun, for instance, your motor system, your sighting system. And then you have Denel Dynamics, which I referred to earlier, which is in the missiles business. They produce both air defense missiles, which means missiles that are fired from the ground to air, as well air-to-air missiles, which will be carried by aircraft for defense and attack against other aircraft systems. Denel has a PMP, Pretoria Metal Pressing, which is located in Attridgeville, which is in the smaller caliber munitions, basically for your R5, R1s, and they also produce AK-47 munitions. And then there's a division that is located down in the Cape, OTB, and they are it's a testing site for various air-based systems in the Cape. And then there's Denel Vehicle Systems, which is in Boksburg, which manufactures vehicles which was acquired just trying to remember my days now. I think it's 2015. I think that's early 2015. That's when that business was acquired. And there's LMT, which is Light Mobility Technologies, which is mainly paramilitary vehicles. They produce those. And it has associate companies. There's Rheinmetall Denel Munitions, which was in the news recently. There was an accident at their Simonstown site. It are located in Simonstown as well as in Northwest at Potchefstroom. There is Hensoldt Optronics, which is at the Centurion campus, which produces sighting systems for both air-based systems for naval vessels as well. And it's, I think I've touched on all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tlhapudi. It might then be useful for you to speak specifically from a DPE perspective of the specific SOEs that you had oversight of.
Chair, besides Denel, I'm also responsible for Alexco, which is a diamond mining company located. Its operations are located in Northwest. My apologies, Northern Cape, in the Richtersveld area at Alexandra Bay. It's right on the Orange River mouth, right on the border with Namibia. And there's also Safcol, which has its operations in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo, and it also has a small plantation in KwaZulu-Natal, in Gome, in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes, and then if you could just elaborate on the teams you had around you as the person responsible for these SOEs, and add to that how you then supported the minister with the work that you as technocrats did. If you could go through that very briefly for the chairman.
Chair, if it can be appreciated, I mean, having oversight over these entities, especially as varied as the ones that I had in my portfolio, you need various skills. I'm an engineer, so I have financial analysts that support me, headed by a chief financial analyst, and we had segmented them by sector as well, so that we have some that are looking after defense, some looking after mining, some of the forestry, because the businesses are different. They operate in different sectors. You have to understand the dynamics of that particular sector to better interpret the financials as we receive them. We also need technical skills. We have foresters, for instance. When you go visit the operations, we need someone that will look at the business from that perspective. Will be able to tell us, there's something wrong here. The plantations don't look to be in the good health. The proper maintenance tasks, silviculture tasks being performed at this business. We also have engineers. I have a mining engineer that looks directly after Alex go. Her responsibility is obviously to provide that technical input, especially as we not only look at the reports but also look at applications to the minister for various ventures. She can look at it from that. We have economists in the team that support us. We have obviously defense specialists that support us. We have access as well to support functions in the department. We have quite a significant legal governance and risk team that support us. And obviously, in view of the SOCs also having a developmental mandate, we have a team that assists us with looking at the socio-economic impact of our SOCs. So they look at, for instance, the CSI program, the Corporate Social Investment Program of the SOC to say, is it addressing the right things? One of the things that we're trying to do as well is to try to get the SOCs for greater impact to work together when they are enrolling these CSI programs. And our particular focus as a department and the SOCs has mainly been in the education space. For instance, SAFCOL would donate a timber-framed building to a school, and then you'll have the likes of ESCOM donate the education aids, for instance, for early childhood, the toys that the kids would use to be able to learn better and so on. So we have that team. We also have an environmental unit that look at whether our SOCs are compliant with environmental requirements. They have the right plans in place. Are those being implemented? We have a skills development team, because one of the things that we try to do as a DPE is to leverage the facilities that our SOCs have for training of artisans, for instance. To say, don't only train for your own requirements. Can you extend it to also train for the wider economy? So those are the kind of skills that we have at our disposal.
Yes. In paragraph 9.1 to 9.4, you set out the elements of the relationship between the shareholder, that's the minister, and the SOE board. I'd like you to take the chairman through that, but as you do that, I would also like you to have regard to Exhibit W5A, which has the governance documents that are relevant to the evidence you set out in paragraph 9. And if you could just illustrate the points you make possibly by pointing to the relevant governance document that underscores the point you may be making in paragraph 9 of your statement. So the reference bundle is W5. A should be the one that has the governance document. So if you just look at that, thank you. To the extent that you're able to, if you can just, so when the chairman looks at this evidence at his leisure, he's able to connect what you're saying in paragraph 9 to the governance documents that we have included in that pack. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Chairperson, where we start with the SOCs, obviously we need to give them objectives, government's objectives, strategic objectives, obviously in line with their own mandate, as they were, whether it's an act that created them, or well, in terms of their MOI and so on. So, how we do that? There's a statement that we refer to as a strategic intent statement, which would be issued by the minister, a year ahead. So for instance, for the next financial year, she will issue it in this year and early in this financial year to enable the SOC as it plans that they are cognizant of those priorities that Minister would be saying, I need you to pay particular focus on these. And obviously, some of those strategic objectives would be derived in what I'll call the overarching document will typically be your national development plan. There will be the medium-term strategic framework which covers administration period, which will have specific deliverables that each SOC, especially, let me say the major ones, especially ESCOM, Transnet, and Denel to a certain extent, are expected to undertake on behalf of government. So that's, and that strategic intent statement is reflected on pages 111 of W5A. That will be reflected as Annexure 3. So that's, so let me get to a specific area in the shareholder compact.
Okay, I think I found it.
On paragraph 11. That would, we have captured it here in the shareholder compact, but it is also a separate document that we issue to the SOC.
Mr. Tlapudi, might I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Which page are you on?
I'm on page 13. Sorry, on
116?
116.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Paragraph 11.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're saying this is an example of a
This is an extract.
SIS strategic
Yeah.
intent statement.
Correct, yes. And as it relates to Denel, you'll see there it talks about Denel supporting maintaining the Department of Defense sovereign and strategic industrial defense capabilities, and also goes on to touch on other expectations of the minister in relation to Denel.
Yes. So the strategic intent statement would actually be contained in the shareholder compact.
It gets reproduced there, but is also a stand-alone document that gets issued early on in the financial year. The next 9.2 we refer to the shareholder compact. Now the shareholder compact would typically be signed also a year ahead of the financial year, but this would be done in the third quarter, normally at the AGM. So, so for the purpose of completeness with the shareholder compact, we would reproduce the strategic intent statement.
The strategic intent statement, does it reflect the strategic objectives that are set for that particular SOE for a particular period of time? Is that, if I put it like that,
you have it right,
would I
Chair.
still be accurate if I put it like that?
It's accurate, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So
yeah.
if you in fact look at moving from your page 116, Mr. Tlapudi, if we went to page 115, you'll find that the strategic intent statement that's on page 116 relates to the financial year 2015-2016,
Yeah.
and that's recorded on page 115. So in this file, you've got 3 different strategic intent statements, which run from the year 2014 to 15, 15 to 16, 16
Yeah.
to 17.
Yeah.
And
That's
each year, the minister would then set out what her expectations are.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And the shareholder compact, Chair, is a performance contract. It would include check whether it's reproduced here, unfortunately not. It includes the specific KPAs and KPIs that the SOC must deliver against. So the AGM minister would be saying, for the next financial year, this is my expectations of you. And of course, at the AGM is also an opportunity to reflect on the performance for the financial year that has just passed. So would have, and in the annual report, the shareholder compact performance of the SOC would be reflected in there. To say the SOC you had 20 KPAs, you were able to deliver on 15 of them. So on the basis of that, it's 75%. We are not so happy. We'd prefer it to be above 80%. So it's the kind of discussion that would go on at the AGM. And of course, it will also provide the SOC with an opportunity to also explain to the minister some of the challenges that may have experienced in the last financial year that disabled them from delivering on the components of the shareholder compact.
At some point, I trust you will then take the chairman to Annexure KT1. You may not wish to do so at this point, which is a document that speaks to exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
But you may want to just complete the information you've set out in paragraph 9 before you go across to Annexure KT1 to illustrate the points you are making.
All right. Yeah, let me do that.
Is it convenient for you to go to it now?
Let me complete paragraph 9, then we can go to it, yeah. And then, in line with the requirements of the PFMA, an NSOC is expected to deliver a corporate plan by the end of February, just before the financial year. So, for instance, for the next financial year, which will be 2020-2021, the corporate plan, we're expecting it by the end of February 2020 to be delivered to us. And the corporate plan would include, for instance, the budget for that particular year. So the SOC is explaining, I have these particular resources at my disposal, and this is how I intend to utilize them to reach the objectives that you have set for me. So I may need to go out and, for instance, do some borrowing because I do not have enough resources at my disposal. There are these ventures that I want to undertake in the next financial year. Please be aware of them. Though I'm giving you a heads up now, there is a particular PFMA process that I will follow at the right time. So that's what the corporate plan is intended to achieve.
So the corporate plan, I assume, is a kind of a follow-up on the strategic intent statement. You first have a strategic intent statement, and once you have got that, you need to have a plan as to how what you will do, or what you will do to achieve those objectives. And that's when you then, in the corporate plan, sets out your plan and how you will go about the business of the SOE to achieve those objectives during that financial year. Is that right?
That's correct, Chairperson. There's
Yes.
also, remember, there is a performance contract as well, the shareholder contract.
Yes.
Which will now, because the strategic statement is obviously written at quite a high level. It's,
Yes.
now the shareholder compact now start to speak to specific deliverables.
Yes.
This is the revenues, the cash flows.
Yes.
These are the products, the number of widgets that I will produce.
Yeah.
Now, corporate plan, you say, how am I going to do this?
Yes.
Mr. Clarkwood, it's correct, though, that the corporate plan would be prepared by the EXCO, by the Executive Committee, presented to the board and signed off by the board of the SOE.
That's correct.
And it would be done in, as you have explained, in that financial year.
The preceding financial year.
So if we take the financial year 2015-2016, which is the year that this commission has a particular interest in because that's when you had a change of board. When the new board arrived, there was a corporate plan in place already. I'm just really trying to explain what documentation governs and then what the new board might have found in place, just to illustrate the point.
Yeah.
So that's correct. When the new board would have come in, the corporate plan would have been in place already. The new corporate plan would be prepared in 2016 for the 2016-2017 year.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes, so just going back to the corporate plan, not only from what you have said, not only does it deal with what will be done, it also deals with how it will be done.
Correct.
With the aim of achieving the objectives and bearing in mind the performance contract. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And is this what the purpose of the monthly meetings or the quarterly performance reports is? You refer to those in paragraph 9.4. Please just speak to that issue.
Now, once we have done all that, now we must stick close to the SOC in order to ensure that they deliver on what they have promised.
Mr. Tlhakudi, I beg your pardon, can I interrupt you? We? Who is we?
Oh, man.
Thank you.
We would be the department in relation to the SOCs that I have oversight over. That would be a team led by myself. And those SOCs, as indicated earlier, is Denel, Alexco, and Safco. And what we do is we would have quarterly reports that would come from the SOC, where now they are saying, in terms of the targets that you set for ourselves, for this quarter, this is how we have performed. Have we exceeded the targets or we have not exceeded the targets? Now, what we also do if an SOC is in trouble, then we demand the monthly reports be submitted to us, so that we are even more closer to the SOC in terms of monitoring its performance. And these quarterly reports, there is what we call an investor brief. It's a document which is an analysis of the quarterly report that we then put together and put it before the minister to say, Minister, this is what is happening with your SOC. And that document the minister would then send to the chairperson of the board to say to the board, we have received your quarterly report. This is our view of your business. We need you to pull up your socks in the following areas, or we commend you in the following areas. And typically, those reports can also trigger the minister saying, let's have a meeting with the board. I'm not happy with the extent of deviation from agreed targets by this particular SOC.
Yes. You then speak about the AGM.
Yeah.
Take the chairman through that particular process.
Yeah. Chairperson, you have referred to it as on 9.5 as the pinnacle of a financial year, because at an annual general meeting, that's where the minister would receive the annual report. Incorporated within that will be the annual financial statements. The minister would also have the external auditors of the SOC attend to give a report on how the business has been looking after the resources entrusted to it. We also would have a board evaluation report, which would give us insight in terms of how the board has been functioning. And some of the things that we'd be interested in is, for instance, the dynamics in the board. Is there a member who is, in terms of the peer review component of the board evaluation report, who's maybe a destructive force in the board? Would be interested in that. And of course, we'll look at things like attendance as well at the AGM. And what has happened in the past is if a particular member is seen not to be prioritizing their role as a director of that SOC, as reflected in the attendance record, the minister would address that and ask them, the director, what's going on? Why can't you make time for this particular role? So it performs that particular role. And of course, depending on whether the board's term has come to an end, it will be an opportune time to also to rotate the board, and codes of good practice speak of you rotate a third of a board at each AGM, but we have not had that opportunity because we tend to change the board wholesale. So you'll find that the 3-year term that they have, all of them, their term is coming to an end at the same time. But also good practice obviously would say retain some of the members so that there's continuity for the board. And sometimes what happens is that you get, because for instance, with regard to the MOI of Denel, a director can serve for a maximum of 3 terms, which is 9 years. You get there, and one of the members has served their 3 terms, so, and that's the point at which they will be rotated. So that's typically the business that will happen, including obviously there will be resolutions as well that will be put before at the minister in line with the MOI of that SOC. So yeah.
So in relation to Denel, the MOI you refer to is of course in W5A.
That's correct.
And you would then be referring to clause 13 of that MOI, which deals with the aspect you touch on.
Yeah, that's correct. I think is it number 5? No. I'm just trying to locate it in the...
If you go to the reference file WA and go through to page 21, 021.
W5A.
Page 21.
W5A.
W.
Is it W5A or is it? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah.
I may have heard wrongly, but I thought you said WA. So.
W5A, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
What page must we
It's
look
page 21, 021.
at? Thank you.
If you can very briefly take the chairman through that section that deals with directors,
Yeah.
which underscores the point you've just made really in relation to a director being eligible for 3 consecutive 3-year terms, meaning they can serve for 9 years is what you're saying on a board. But that provision is set out in the MOI.
Chair, paragraph 13.1.2 on page 21, it speaks to a director being appointed for a 3-year term, and it also says that no person is appointed as a director for longer than 3 consecutive terms. That's where the 9 years is coming from.
We'll come back to this
Thank
when
you.
you deal with the board of directors,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tlagudi.
Yeah,
You were on paragraph 9.5
9.5.
and just tidying up the matters that arise there.
yeah. All right. I think I've covered 9.5. We'll have an opportunity when you get to KT1 to go through an AGM pack and show the chair the structure of the AGM pack. And on 9.6, we are saying, besides the functions of shareholder oversight that I've touched on, the minister and the department receives correspondence throughout the year, and would be expected, for instance, to analyze those and advise on what intervention should be taken. And what would happen is that, depending on which entity it relates to, would be referred to the right sector team so that we can respond. And we also have in 9.7 forums that we serve on behalf of the department. For instance, in the defense sector, I sit on the National Defense Industry Council on behalf of the department, and that council is convened by the Department of Defense, and my interest being there on behalf of the department is to ensure that Denel's is assisted in terms of achieving its own mandate, and because it's in the defense industry in this country, Denel is also quite a gorilla as well. So also we get, if there are areas of weakness that are affecting the rest of the industry, we get to know about them there. So we are able to come back and deal with them when we get back. So the same would apply with each particular entity. So that's, in a nutshell, Chair, what the shareholder oversight role as is undertaken by the department on behalf of the minister entails.
Can you just very briefly tell the chairman who the primary stakeholders of Denel are?
Yeah. Chair, the primary stakeholder in this country will be the Department of Defense. As I indicated earlier, the Denel at some point was supplying 40% of its revenues were derived from business for the Department of Defense. And of course, when countries decide to purchase arms, because it's governments that purchase, and typically those governments in those governments will be the departments of defense in those countries that do the purchasing. And typically the point of entry will be our defense, the Department of Defense, and the Minister of Defense. So it's a very important stakeholder, and it's a stakeholder that we also utilize quite extensively. In terms of marketing the products of Denel, because especially that's why it becomes important as well, and that's one of the challenges that we have had, that your local defense force utilizes your products, because that gives confidence to a foreign buyer that this must be a good product if their own defense force is utilizing it. And of course, because Denel has had or let me rather say, the Department of Defense budgets have been cast over the years. The amount of business that the Department of Defense does with Denel has been going down. So that's where the export sales have come in to assist us in terms of maintaining the defense industrial capability that is housed within Denel. The rest of the industry is obviously quite critical. Denel is quite reliant on bought-in services, products, because in producing a system, there are subsystems, there's components of it that will be produced by various players in the sector. That's why when Denel has the kind of challenges that it's been having of late, it affects those companies. Some of them have had to close as a result. Because the development of defense products is technologically intensive. There's research and development that gets undertaken. An entity like CSIR, which is reports to the Department of Science and Technology, is an important player. The academic fraternity, the engineering departments are very important sources of not only of skills, but also of research, because Denel would sponsor certain projects in those universities that will become the basis on which they develop products within Denel. And I don't know whether I should go why the Department of Trade and Industry, for instance, would also be quite important. There's an export council that they are sponsoring. That effort is important for Denel in terms of getting their products out. Someone like NCACC, which is a national council on arms compliance, I may have just mixed up the words there, would be important. It's chaired by Minister Khatebe. It licenses who can buy and sell arms, and they offer end-user certificates to the industry. Those are important in terms of ensuring compliance by Denel, and of course they do their own audits to ensure that particular compliance. So I'll touch on those stakeholders, ma'am.
Thank you. Chairman, I notice it's just after 11:15. It might be convenient for us to take the tea break now.
Yes, let's take the tea adjournment. We'll resume at 11:30. We adjourn.
All right.
deal with the next section, just to tidy up the evidence you have just given before tea, can you spell out for the chairman the nexus between the sovereign integrity of our country? I know that the defense review document speaks to maintaining a sovereign integrity. It's a constitutional imperative. And the obligation on Denel to maintain a sovereign capability as a manufacturer and provider of specific goods and services. I wanted to deal with this simply because it's a debate that's going to inform some of the matters that we will be dealing with going forward.
Chair, our country, as everyone is aware, starting from after 1994, we adopted a particular posture when it comes to defense. We said we are no longer going to be the country we were before then that causes instability amongst its own neighbors. We said that we shall defend ourselves against any aggression that will come our way. We will not go out as an aggressor. And as everyone is aware, as well as a country, we have been played a lead role in keeping peace on our continent. We have deployed our people, our soldiers, as well as equipment to ensure that. Now, in order to be able to perform, to basically effect that posture, it is important for a country like ours to have a capable defense industrial capability. And that's where Denel comes in. And that's where the other players in the defense industry who are South African-owned come in. And we are also fortunate in this country that we have quite a significant presence of defense multinationals in this country. And they've been attracted, obviously, by both business opportunities selling to our country, but also they have been attracted by the skills base that we have in our country. If I may use a term, it may be politically incorrect, we have an apartheid dividend in the defense industry that we have in place. Because of the past that we had, our country had to be self-sufficient. So we are quite fortunate to have the defense industry capabilities that we have here. Now, what the Defense Review 2015 sought to do was to try and classify those defense industrial capabilities. It came up with a number of categories. It says we have what is called sovereign capabilities. Now, a sovereign capability is the kind of capability that would say it's at the highest level of criticality in terms of us being able to maintain the posture that I've referred to earlier. And a division of Denel which produces missiles has been classified as having sovereign capability. Because one of the products that it produces is an air defense missile, so that if you were to have an aggressor, you're able to fend them off using that kind of capability. Then the next category of capability is what they call strategic capabilities. Now, the strategic capabilities within Denel would be the other 5 divisions of Denel. The production of large caliber munitions, small caliber munitions, your ability to be able to maintain, repair, and overhaul your equipment, that would be a strategic capability. Your ability to produce vehicles, armored vehicles, combat vehicles, those would be strategic capabilities. And linked to those definitions is that there's also the question that comes up is what level of ownership should the state have in order to ensure that that capability is sustainable and is accessible to the state. And one of the discussions that were happening in in the National Defense Industry Council was, if we say this capability is a sovereign capability, should the state not have ownership of it? And typically, Denel would be a depository of that kind of capability. If you say it's a sovereign capability, can a multinational that is operating in this country have a part ownership in an entity which is a depository of that capability? Now, what do we do with what we call strategic capabilities? Do we say that an entity that is domiciled in South Africa is the only one that can have, in which those capabilities can be deposited? And of course, with non-strategic capabilities, obviously, then the argument would be anyone can be able to have ownership of an entity in which those non-strategic capabilities are domiciled. So that's how those definitions of sovereign and strategic capabilities were defined in relation to specific defense players in the country.
Yes. Now let's throw into that explanation the whole concept of intellectual property, because you speak of Denel being the depository of this sovereign capability. What I take from that is you're saying that the intellectual property that resides in Denel, in certain circumstances, must remain in Denel. But where there are partnerships, you spoke of international companies coming into the country, it's the type of intellectual property that would benefit the equity partners in that relationship. Maybe you could just want to elaborate a little more on that, why it is so important when you deal with Denel's intellectual property and when you deal with skills flight from Denel, certain protective measures have to be taken to secure not just the sovereign capability, but the sovereign capacity to protect this country.
Chairperson, as I said earlier, the defense products are technologically intensive. Defense generally is at the cutting edge of new technologies. In fact, a lot of the products that we use in our everyday lives, including the GPS system, is developed in the defense space. Now, that capability, for it to be effective for you, it's important that appropriate measures are put in place to ensure its security. In terms of, obviously, the documentation, that is a direct result of the development activities that you undertake, like the design information that you would have, some of the results that will come from testing and evaluation of that particular equipment. But most importantly, this capability also lies in people's heads. So it's important to also have a sense of who are those critical engineers, be they systems engineers, be they domain specialists, that complete the picture in terms of the capability, because capability also includes the facilities that you'd have that you are running, the procedures and working instructions that inform how those facilities should be utilized and so on. So that, in a nutshell, is what the capability is. And of course, in this day and age, a lot of this is also in software. It lies in software. So it's important to have appropriate measures to protect that. And if you don't take appropriate measures, and we know this particular industry is also, there's also quite a lot of activity of foreign agents. You also have the risk of some of you losing that intellectual capability and landing in the hands of people that ordinarily should not have. For instance, people that are likely to, or countries that are likely to be aggressive towards you, would not want them to know what capabilities you have and how you intend to deploy them in the event that they were to follow through on their aggression. So that's in a nutshell, that's with regard to intellectual maybe I should add as well that as you do sales of arms, one of the conditions that come up, because countries as well, they've realized that if you just buy these products from supplier countries, there comes a time when your interests differ or diverge, and during those times, the supplier country is able to stop supplying you, and therefore rendering the equipment that you have bought from them useless. And now what they are tending to do, they say, well, we want to have the capability to produce, support, and maintain the equipment in our own countries. Now, for them to be able to do that, there's expectations then that there will be technology transfers. And we have also, as a country, done that when we are purchasing equipment. For instance, the strategic defense packages, there was some technology that was transferred to this country in exchange for us purchasing those particular arms. And Denel typically, as it does, because most of its business is foreign sales, there are expectations that it will do that it transfer certain levels of technology to other countries in exchange for lending the sales or the orders.
Yes, thank you. Let's get back to more pedantic matters which you deal with at paragraph 12 of your statement, but maybe to give a context to what we're going to deal with now. Please tell the chairman who the Minister of Public Enterprises was when you assumed office.
Chair, if I may, Council, at this particular point, I also wanted to say that I'm quite cognizant of my role here. The statement, the purpose of the statement obviously speaks to why I'm here, and primarily is around the Denel board appointments, but also that speaks to the other appointments that were done in our department.
Yes.
It also speaks to the Denel Asia process. But what I'll say secondary is that, Chairperson, I want to speak for those people as well that were subject to victimization for daring to speak up.
Well, that's very important, Mr. Tlakudi, because sometimes you may be called primarily for a certain issue, but your knowledge of things that are relevant to the investigation of the commission, the whole purpose of the commission goes wider. And so we encourage that people tell us. The preferred way of doing it is, of course, if it's put in a statement first, so that if there are any people that are implicated, they can be notified. But certainly that information is important, and you must be able to talk about it.
And later on in my statement, I go quite into detail with regard to my own experience.
Yes.
And I want to say that,
So just to make sure you understand, so I welcome your preparedness to talk about other incidents where people, as you say, may have been victimized for standing for what is right.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Chair. And some of these people, Chair, were much braver than myself, and I'll explain later on.
Yes.
Some of them as a direct result of daring, whether it is in the SOCs or in the government departments, by saying it should not happen that way to their principal, it should happen this way. They were removed. And some of these people, Chair, have had their livelihoods thrown into disarray. They have seen their children being put out of school, they've lost their houses. And that's really what happens out there, Chair. In our department today, we are getting to hear some of those stories. Because people now feel a lot more confident because we have the minister that we have in our
Yes.
department to now speak up and say, this is
Yes.
what happened to me. I've tried.
Yes, yes.
I've tried to go to the courts. It has not
Yes.
worked. It's too expensive.
Yes, yes.
And I'll touch on my own experience.
Yes.
And like I say, they were much braver than I. I think there was an element of self-preservation that
Yes.
informed
Yes.
my own conduct, and I'll speak to
Yes.
it later on.
Yes.
So I thought it's important that I just put that up front.
No, that's very important, and I do want to hear those stories because they are important, you know. In the midst of everything that was happening, there were people. There were human beings. And if people suffered for standing for what is right, we as a nation need to know who are the people who try to do what is right, who try to say wrong things mustn't be done, but they were victimized, they were removed. We need to hear all of that because apart from anything else, that also speaks to the extent of the damage that happened. So I encourage you, I encourage everybody out there who knows such stories and people who did suffer to come forward and tell us what happened, because one of the things that the commission has got to do is that at the end, if it finds that there were these things that happened, it must make recommendations about what measures must be put in place so that people are never put through that kind of thing again. And it can't do that effectively if it doesn't know what happened to people. So that's very important.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And Mr. Tlhakudi, if I might add, this is a fact-finding commission. So the facts that you can share with this commission, as the chairman says, are most welcome. Please proceed to deal with just the historical background behind board appointments. But can you start off by just telling us who was the Minister of Public Enterprises when you joined DPE?
Chair, I joined DPE in 2012. I was interviewed by Minister Gigaba and Deputy Minister Benedict Martins at the time. So when I arrived at the department, Mr. Gigaba was still the minister. Mr. Martins had moved to another portfolio. And Mr. Gratitude Magwanishe was the deputy minister in the department.
Then, of course, we had elections in 2014, and you had a change of ministers. Who took over at that point?
After the elections, there was new appointments, and the new minister that came in was Minister Lynn Brown to replace Minister Gigaba, and the deputy minister continued to be Mr. Gratitude Magwanishe.
So the evidence that you're about to give dealing with the period 2014-15, 15-16 is a period where Minister Lynn Brown was the Minister of Public Enterprises.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Chair, if I may go on to paragraph 13, that, as I said earlier on, the AGM is a very important event in a financial year, and one of the tasks that are undertaken at an AGM would be the review of directors and rotation. And of course, what would then happen is if there's a rotation, you would have the new directors inducted through what we call a special general meeting, which will follow the AGM. And the events that I'm going to speak to here as they relate to Denel, as I say in paragraph 12, they were reflected also in ALESCO and SAFCO. but of course I'm going to deal with Denel only. And Chair, we have included the pack for emanating from the AGM of 2015, and it's reflected as KT1. And in KT1, which is page 37, what you have there is what would normally happen after an AGM would prepare a memorandum, a decision memorandum for the minister, which would cover the various issues that were dealt with at the AGM, and that would be to enable her, obviously, for our own records, to sign off on them and say, yes, I agree, these are the decisions that we made. And if you go further, Chair, you'll see on page 57, we have the table of resolutions that would have been dealt with at the AGM of 2015, and as well as the decisions that the minister would have made. And then on page 66.
Can I ask you, before you get to page 66, just to reflect briefly on page 60. 60. And that would be under agenda item 9, because that speaks to what you deal with in paragraph 12, 13 and onwards.
So page 60 paragraph?
It's item 9.
Oh, item 9, yes.
Which is the item that deals with the retirement, appointment and reappointment of non-executive directors.
Correct. So in this case, at this particular AGM, the decision to rotate the then members of the board was taken by the minister, and the names of the members that were rotated are reflected in that paragraph 9. Council, is that?
Yes, that's fine, because you want to go to page 66, and then I will take you through to,
I just
to
wanted
the next section I'd like you to focus on.
All right. I wanted to take the chair through the various documentation that will be dealt with. Obviously, at the AGM, we have an agenda that is reflected here, there, and and
it's at page 66.
On page 66.
Yes.
And of course, there's various agenda items, like we start with the notice to members, which would be the first item, or the fourth item rather, on the agenda. That's obviously, this will be done in line with the Companies Act and the MOI of the business. And what would normally happen is that if you go to page 70, then you'd have the minister give an address to the directors, and this would typically be speaking to the annual report as it was received, the analysis that we have performed, and the minister's own views as to the performance of the SOC during the past financial year. And if Chair goes to page 71, as can be seen, the shareholder compact that we spoke about earlier, Denel had achieved 80% of the shareholder compact. And as we further, as you go to the next...
Mr.
Sure.
Tlakudi, if I might interrupt you, could you just go back to page 70, because that's really the beginning of the minister's feedback to the board. And I note that she is quite complimentary of the board that was chaired by Marty van Rensburg, Janse van Rensburg. I note right from the outset, in her very first paragraph, she speaks to their professionalism. Maybe you just want to read, it's line 1, 2, 3. Read her comment on the outgoing board as recorded. in this paragraph?
Chair, I agree with the council. It was quite complimentary, and the minister started by saying, I first wish to note the role and contributions of all employees of Denel, management and board of directors towards another successful financial year. I'm cognizant that my address to the 2015 AGM also marks the end of the term of the current board. It has indeed been a pleasure working with you. Your professionalism, the spirit with which you have served the company has not only ensured a smooth transition, but more especially set the company on a long-term path of sustainable performance.
If you look at the financial overview as well, which is just below that,
Exactly.
that too was positive.
Yeah, this was a very positive. The order book was looking very healthy at,
Yes.
at 35 billion rands. These would be orders that have been secured but yet to be executed
Yes.
in the business.
And is it correct that this would have been one of the highest levels of order book cover that Denel had had in a while?
That is correct. As I will speak to it later on, Denel performance was very pleasing. In actual fact, year to year, they were exceeding the corporate plan that had given to us. In fact, every year we get together, we'll just bump it up a little bit to say, we seem not to be stretching you enough. And
Because you realize that they were just exceeding the targets.
yes, we
That's
thought
right.
maybe a bit too conservative in how we were setting them. But really, it was this board and the executive team that was in place was doing a magnificent job.
In fact, the board, just prior to this one, which was chaired by Mr. Kunene, really started this track, this new way of doing things.
That's correct. Mr. Kunene's term had come to an end in the previous financial year because he had served his 9 years.
Yes.
Ms. van Rensburg took over, and she also was, I must say, quite an impressive chairperson, and she led the organization in a very good way, as
Yes.
reflected in these results.
Yes.
As you can see, the revenues went up by 28%, which is a great performance in anyone's book. The equity, this on the next page 71, the second bullet point, the total equity position tripled in 3 years. This was a business that was doing well, and as I'll later on explain, but also it's still a fragile business because it's coming from years of losses. It was just starting to break and start to make some profit. So, and there was really expectation that we'll make even better profits going forward.
Of course, the minister also just set out what you called areas of concern, just to give a balanced overview.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's the next paragraph.
Yeah.
You may want to read that into the record.
Yeah. In the still on paragraph 71, there were 3 areas that were highlighted: commercial paper a redemption. This is backed up by the guarantee from the National Treasury. Will be during the current financial Denel board. We need to ensure that the SOC is in a position to fulfill these obligations. So this was a very important task for the SOC to ensure it's fulfilled.
Could you tell the chairman what the guarantee at that point was?
It was
that the government had provided?
It was sitting at about at 1.85 billion rands, and if the institutions, the financial institutions and the asset managers that are providing that funding, if they are not able to come through, it means that government has to step in, because that's what the guarantee is for. Government must fund 1.85 billion rands. It was important to highlight it to them to see, we expect you to do all you can to ensure that this facility is renewed by those institutions. And then, of course, we speak to the current liabilities. been the highest they have been. That the chorus balance with the asset side of the needs to be maintained, but also it was a product of a business that was growing. So as you grow, you tend to have to take. You need more money to be able to fund your operations. So your liabilities will obviously go up as well. You tend to also. Yeah, okay, let me leave that. But I think the point is that you are extending yourself now. As you're extending yourself, you need more support, so you go to third parties to assist you.
You've dealt with the shareholder compact and the fact that they, in fact, exceeded their objectives. Could you then have a look at page 72, the comments relating to research and development, etc.?
Yeah.
Maybe before you do that, just on the achievements of the shareholders' compact targets, 88% had been achieved by the outgoing board. Was that quite a high performance? Was that taken as quite a high performance compared to other years?
Yes, Chairperson, it was quite. It's quite a high score to achieve. The AG normally would say 80% is
Yes.
what I'm looking for, but
Yes.
if we had to look at our SOCs at the time, in general they were hovering around 50 to 60%. So this was quite a pleasing performance.
So this was very impressive.
This was very impressive.
Yes, okay, thank you.
You might as well just go through the other bullet points under shareholder compact. These are all the positives that the minister pointed out.
That's correct, yes. Because one of the points that we had been raising with Denel was with regard to transformation, representation of our people in the programs, that they are doing meaningful work, and of course the representation of females in the business was also something that was very important. So we are quite happy to see that they have done something about it. It had now gone up to 53% at that particular time, that is of black people in general, and we are happy with where it was going. One of the reasons we had raised this point as well was that because Denel had gone through some very difficult times. Now, when that happens, you tend to cut back on training, for instance, on taking on new stuff. So what will happen is that the average age of your workforce will tend to go up. And now, if you have the capability lying people who are in their late 50s, early 60s, they're bound to retire at some point. And the numbers were showing us that they were going to be living en masse. And we called it, stealing from the financial, so we called it a skills cliff. And that's what was important for us to really drum on this point, to say, Denel, you need to be doing something in this particular area.
And in any event, the defense industry is fairly conservative. So, and you had inherited a Denel that, well, an organization that was pale, male orientated, really. So transformation was a critical KPI for Denel.
Correct, and that, Chair, should not be underestimated, because Denel, by virtue of the products it produces, was really at the heart of the security state that defined our country before 1994. And of course, by virtue of that, it was the complexion of it was as per what the Council has defined. started during the first much earlier. So the elements that inform the AGM will have started rolling quite early on in the year. So yeah, so it's also quite an iterative process, if I may say. So, but really to get it, so you'd have some sense as well. I must add as well at that point, as you see, because you have been having quarterly reports, you'd have some sense of the state of the business, what are the areas of concern.
So it starts about a few months before the AGM, more or less.
A few months before the AGM.
Yes, but as you say, as each year progresses, you are getting quarterly reports, you are getting monthly reports, and therefore, if you are keeping an eye, you have a sense of what is likely to be the picture when you get the final, the annual report.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And really that's, when you get that annual report, you have the AGM pack put together. That's when you can, with certainty be able to advise, Minister, let's strengthen in this area. Please note this particular director's mandate is tenure is coming to an end. Let's make a change there. So that's when you can really now with certainty be able to go and brief the minister in terms of what should be done.
So there's a direct nexus between the information that is put into and that comes out of the annual report and your recommendation as a team within the department to the minister on how well the board is doing, whether they ought to be given a second term or a third term, depending on where a board member sits. That is actually critical information in determining what your advice to the minister might be.
That's correct, Chair. Because it's a task that cannot be taken lightly. You are dealing with people's reputations, and if you make arbitrary decisions, they may affect you going forward. Because, as you can imagine, people to sit on the board, they are volunteering their time. Sitting on state-owned and private companies' boards, by the way, it's not a lucrative role. In actual fact, the risks that you expose yourself to are much more than what you may be receiving in remuneration. So, and what it may do is that those that you may be seeking to attract later on may be a little bit reluctant to avail themselves because they would not want to be subjected to that kind of treatment.
To take the risks that are
Correct,
involved,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you speak of arbitrary decision making. Just hang on to those two words. But please take us through the process that actually unfolded when consideration was given to a new board.
Yeah. Council, should I maybe finish paragraph 17, then I can come to that point.
That's in order.
Yeah. And then, Chair, what would happen out of that process? You have sort of a long list of board members that would be presented to the minister for his or her consideration in terms of the gaps that we would have identified. Typically, what as a department would say, here's a long list, Minister, but there are these skills that we need. Say, for instance, we need finance people and typically a CA to augment the audit and risk committee. We maybe need a very strong commercial lawyer because we've seen a gap here. We need someone strong technically in this particular area as well. So we say, as you deliberate on the long list, please do not forget our requirements. And that list would be presented, and we later on say that we also understand that a minister is a politician. She operates in a political space, and what would happen? And we are not privy to those processes. she would go and consult with her counterparts, other ministers, maybe the party that is deploying her, to say these are the appointments that we seek. Then what would come out of that would be, at least then that would inform the appointment. And that appointment, there must be a cabinet memorandum that gets put together for her to get the consent of cabinet to make the appointment. So that's how that process unfolds. And ideally, you want that process to unfold before the AGM. But also what you don't want to do is if you do it too long ahead of the AGM, information has a way of coming out. You can imagine you're sitting on the board and then 3 months before you get to know that you're going to be removed. And you have not been given an opportunity to make your representation, or you have not even finished your work, so to speak. It does not really sit well. So ideally, the timing is important in terms of presentation to cabinet and the AGM where you would make the appointment. And then of course I've spoken to the cabinet memorandum. Now, coming to Denel, the process started a lot earlier than usual in 2014.
In 2014, you say, is when it started?
In 2014, that's
correct. That was
correct.
before the end of the financial year, which would have ended in March 2015.
Yeah, that's correct.
Continue.
In 2014.
What do you say started in 2014?
In 2014, for the 2015 AGM. And let me say
Or you say the process that you have been talking about?
No, I'm saying the process of appointment, not the AGM process, because we did not commence the AGM process before we had come to the end of the financial year.
Yes.
But I understood you to say what was unusual this time was that you actually started considering new board members prior to the end of the financial year, and this was rather unusual.
It was.
I think that's what the chairman was trying to understand.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
I'm speaking now to the appointment of board of directors.
Yes.
And
before you proceed, just to make sure we are on the same page. The board of directors that was in place before 2015 had largely been there from 2012.
From 2011.
I know the dates of appointment might not be the same, but largely, were they? Most of them would have been from 2012, more or less.
So maybe I should take you to page 10
of your statement.
10, yes, of the statement.
Yes.
You'll see there's the last paragraph, the last column rather there speaks to the appointment dates.
Yes.
You'll see that the chairperson at the time, Ms. van Rensburg, had been on the board since 2010, August 2010.
Yes.
And she had been chairing from August 2014, from the AGM in 2014.
But just to complete that thought, sorry to interrupt you. So she could possibly have been re-elected for a final 3-year consecutive term, because she'd been there for 2 consecutive terms of 3 years.
That's correct.
And she could have stayed on. This is just by way of example. She could have stayed on for her final 3 years.
That's correct.
If you could do that with each one of these board members, not the executive directors, but the independent non-executive directors, if you could just go through how much time they could possibly still have spent on the Denel board, the chairman might appreciate that.
And maybe before you do that, is the position that usually, so is the position that your 3-year term as a member of the board, you referred us earlier on to the relevant document that said a term is 3 years and then can be renewed, but it can't be, you can't serve for more than 9 years. Now, we know that the starting time might be different. Does that necessarily mean the finishing time will also be different in the sense that it can't be that a particular board, its term ends, all of them ends on the same day because they would have come on different days?
Ultimately, still, it's the prerogative of the shareholder, because though the MOI is saying that your appointment is for 3 years, but it's always subject for review at each
Annually?
Annually.
Okay.
If there is any reason informed by some of the pros I've referred to, for the minister to feel that member X is not helping on this board, she can rotate that specific member at. Now, it has happened, of course, where you find that there is an extraordinary issue that arises with regard to how the board as a collective are directing an entity, that the minister would then choose to rotate the whole board.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm looking for is confirmation that when we talk about a term of 3 years, because every member of the board, of a board under Denel, his or her term of office at any one time is 3 years.
That's correct.
But the point you have just made is that although your term is 3 years at any one time, you can be removed earlier.
That's correct.
That's fine. But the 3-year term simply gets calculated from your date of appointment as a member of the board. So each one has got his or her own 3 years, so to speak. That's what I wanted to confirm.
That's correct. It is not a collective term. It's each one of the members is appointed individually.
Individually, yes.
So they can have different starting and finish time dates.
Which makes it quite important for you as the department to keep an eye on whose term ends when, for purposes of preparing to fill or renew where it's renewable.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, just to bring a little more clarity to this, of course, the shareholders' prerogative extends to appointing a board member for 1 year. There is no obligation to appoint a board member for a 3-year term. And in fact, Minister Gigaba appointed some of these board members for 1 year as opposed to extending their contracts, their terms of office rather, for 3 years.
Correct.
I mean, it's a flexible prerogative.
Yeah, it is.
And really, Chair, that prerogative is found in the MOI at clause 13.2.1, which is one of the governing documents.
Oh, okay. So in other words, when we talk about a term of office of 3 years for members of the board at Denel, that is still subject to the minister being able to make it less than 3 years.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay. It's a rather strange term. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Now,
so you're on page 10 and you're dealing with the different members.
Like on paragraph 22.1, that's Marty, we have dealt with her, and she was, of course, a member of the Audit and Risk Committee until her appointment as a chairperson of the board. And then going down to 22.
You are at 10 now.
On page 10.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Tlakudi, just for completeness sake, you might as well deal with the qualifications as well, because it gives the chairman a sense of the skill set of that particular board. You were going to come back to it anyway, but because you're on this particular schedule, I think it might just be convenient to deal with the skill set and deal with which particular committees they sat on and how long then their term of office was or had been.
Correct, yeah. With regard to Ms. van Rensburg, as you can see, she's a chartered accountant, and she had a career as an executive as well as leading boards, and prior to her appointment to this position, she had been on the TCTA board. She's also represents the audit fraternity on their association. So that's the kind of caliber of person that we have there. If you go down to Advocate Gandhi Patela, as can be seen, he's an engineer with master's degrees, 2 master's degrees in engineering and 1 in...
Is it not 3?
That's 22.4, Advocate Patela.
Is it not 3?
Yeah, the third one is in engineering management.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah. And then he also has an MBA and an LLB, and is obviously an admitted advocate. Is that how it's referred to? And he had been appointed in July 2011. And he had, by the time the AGM came around, he was still eligible to continue with his second term. So, and then we have Dr. Gert Krijwagen, who is a risk specialist, who has a PhD and MBSc, and that would be a medical qualification, but is quite one of the prominent risk people we have in this country. As you can see, he also has a background in security as a certificate in advanced security. And he had been with on the Denel board since September 2008, and would have been eligible to finish his term, which should have been by 2017, if we go for the maximum 3 terms.
Yes, that's correct.
And he was appointed as a chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee when Ms. van Rensburg was elevated to the chairing. And then we have Ms. Zipose Tumatenjwa, who also, she had a BSc, Financial and Business Qualifications, 2 master's degrees, 1 in Business Administration as well as 1 in International Business, and she had been appointed to be to the board in 2011, July 2011, and was a member of an Audit and Risk Committee. And then we come to Mr. Mutseki, whose qualifications are certificate in forensic investigations and crime intelligence, and of course, he's not at the same level as the other people that I've referred to now, the board members that I've spoken to now. And he had been appointed in July 2011 to July 2015. And at this point, I must just say, Chairperson Mr. Mutseki was retained when there was a rotation going forward.
Retained and kept on the 2015-2016 board.
Board, that's correct, yes. And then we have Mr. Mavuso Msimang, who's quite well known. He has a BSc and an MBA, and he has also led a number of organizations, CETA, Department of Home Affairs, and Parks. So he's quite a renowned business and political figure in this country. So he was also appointed in July 2011. and was also rotated in 2015. He was a member of the Social and Ethics Committee. And we also have Mr. Bafana Ngwenya, who had certificates in defense management, project management, and strategic management, whose background is also, or qualifications are also not at the same level as others, but he was rotated in 2015.
I note that both Mr. Mutseki and Mr. Ngwenya were not members of any particular subcommittee of the board.
That's correct.
Yes, continue.
So far, only Mutseki, the only name we've come across of somebody who was retained beyond 2015 is Mr. Mutseki, is that right?
Mr. Mutseki, yes.
Okay, all right.
So that duration actually should have been corrected, Chair. He served beyond, he resigned during the next board term. He was not rotated, he opted to resign. And then we have Professor Stella Nkomo, who is a professor at, the last time I checked was at the University of Pretoria. He's quite a leading figure in the academic space, and she was also a member of the Personnel Remuneration and Transformation Committee, as well as a member of the Social and Ethics Committee. I think she also actually chaired the committee on Personnel Remuneration and Transformation. And then we have Advocate Melissa Nchikila, who has an LLB as a highest qualification, was a member of the Personnel Remuneration and Transformation Committee. And then lastly, we have Mr. Matotsi Rachimbilani, who has a BProc and specializes in mining law, as reflected there, and also has a business qualification. And he was on the board from July 2011.
Don't lower your voice too much, Mr. Tlagoti. Don't lower your voice too much.
Oh, okay, my apologies. So the last two members, Ms. Nchikila, who has an LLB and also is a member of the Personnel Remuneration and Transformation Committee. Mr. Matotsi Rachimbilani, who has a BProc and specializes in mining law and also has those qualifications as reflected. They were appointed in July 2011.
If it's convenient for you to look at the new board at this point in time, you'll find that schedule on page 17.
Yeah. Chair, the incoming board in July 2015 is reflected on page 17. And let me start by looking at them collectively. I'm saying the board's collective qualifications, experience, as well as leadership in business. There's quite a gulf, and that's my personal opinion. As reflected on there, and
well, that's important, Mr. Tlakudi, because you were the leader of the team whose job was to look at these things and to advise the minister.
Correct.
And you had been doing it before. Okay. But that was your reaction when you saw it immediately. That's your immediate reaction.
That was the immediate reaction. And one of the immediate reactions was with regard to Mr. Mancha, who is the chairperson. And typically what you do at these days, Chair, is you Google these people, want to know who they are. And,
yes.
And we go into detail as well later on. And you find Mr. Mancha at some point was struck off the role of attorneys. Say, well, that doesn't seem to be a good background to bring on to chairing an entity like Denel.
But he, of course, was reinstated.
Of course, he was.
By the time he became chairman, he was back on the role of attorney.
He had been back on the role, yes.
But what you...
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
You go.
The point you are making is, even though he may have been reinstated, the fact that he had that situation of being struck off the roll for the reason that he was struck off the roll was not a good thing for somebody to be put in the position of chairing the board of Denel. That's the point you're making.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
And which is quite a sophisticated business, is also a top 100 defense company in the world and has a significant international business portfolio. And of course, there was also he had no significant board experience that he was bringing with, which was quite concerning, I must add.
There you are. That last statement you are making is still in relation to Mr. Mancha.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right.
And then the next board member is Mr. Mpho Mongwe, who had a BCom, and as my memory recalls, had some audit experience, and ended up being.
So you are skipping those who were retained from the previous board, is that right?
The two, Riaz Saluji and Fikile Montlo, were the executive directors.
Oh,
So
those
they
were executive directors,
Yeah,
okay.
they were part of the management
yes,
team.
Okay, no, that's fine. So the next non-executive member of the board was Mpho Mongwe. Okay, yes.
Yeah, and
Can I just ask, with Mpho Mongwe, having a BCom and being chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee did not reduce the obligation on her. Was Mpho male or female?
if you can speak into the mic.
Mpho is male, female?
She's female.
Female, thank you. So it didn't reduce the obligation on her to supervise the CFO, who was a CA. So you're looking at a situation where the chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee is not as qualified as the person who's bringing the numbers to her committee. Didn't that raise a concern for the department?
Of course it did, but this is the list that we're working with. She was the one that had some commercial and audit background. But as you correctly put it, the fact that you are this underqualified for role doesn't mean that your responsibilities are diminished. And that's basically one of the challenges that we had to deal with this particular board.
If you can remember, the previous chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee was somebody with what qualifications?
Well, if you go back to Marty van Rensburg and then to Kruiwagen. And that's on page 10.
That is on page 10. As I indicated, Marty was a chartered accountant, and Mr. Dr. Kruiwagen had a PhD and also is quite a well-known risk specialist and had been on the Audit and Risk Board for quite some time. And I must just say that we also had a bit of a disadvantage even with the Denel board at the time, because Marty was the only CA that was on there. So when she became the chairperson, it means we didn't have another CA, but Mr. Dr. Kruiwagen had the gravitas, the knowledge, because the Audit and Risk Committee has two functions, the audit side as well as the risk management portion. So in terms of the ability to oversee the work being done by the CFO, we did not have a worry, we did not have a concern there.
Yes, continue.
And then we come to Mr. Pinky Mahlangu, who has a BPROC and was a member of the Personnel Remuneration Committee. Then we had Nonyameko Madindi, who is a quantity surveyor.
Can I take you back to Ms. Mpho Khomongwen? It doesn't appear here at page 17, but maybe you do know. What was she working as? This is not a full-time job, it's part-time. So what was she working as in whatever job she was working, or what business was she running, if she was running a business? Or is there something you would not know?
Yeah, Chair, I have to rely on my memory and I stand to be correct, but I think she was in an entrepreneurship business. I think she had a franchise that she was running. So she was not, for instance, running an audit firm or something like that would be linked directly to the responsibilities
because she was not a chartered accountant, she was not an auditor. Okay, so that's as far as your recollection is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But her CV at the time reflected some audit experience, I must say. So that's basically what set her apart with regard to the role. Because as you go through the list, you'll realize that from that space, for someone to lead that kind of a function, we are not that endowed with the other members.
Yes. And with regard to Ms. Pinky Mahlangu, says P-Proc, do you know what her job was? Was she an attorney or something? Or is that something you can't recall?
I can't recall.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And I must say, as I go through those that I can recall, I'll speak to it.
Yes. Okay.
And we have Ms. Nonyameko Madindi, who is a quantity surveyor. She has a quantity surveying and project management qualification, and she was also a member of the Personnel Remuneration and Transformation Committee. I don't know much about her. I can't recall much about her. Ms. Refilo Mkwena, I knew who she was, and she had served on the board of AMSCO. She had actually been a deputy chair of the board of AMSCO, which was chaired by General Mutau when I was at AMSCO.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was one, would say, had
some
defense
sector experience.
Exactly, and also board experience.
Yes.
And she's also an admitted attorney. I think she's also acted as a judge as well. So I happened to know her from my time that I was at AMSCO. There's Mr. Nkopane Mutseki we have spoken to earlier. And then we have Mr. Msomi, who has a BA law degree here. But I know because he was the chief of staff for Minister Gigaba when Mr. Gigaba was the Minister of Public Enterprises, and so went on to become the advisor when Mr. Gigaba went on to Home Affairs and to National Treasury. But he had not practiced law, so he had studied law but had not practiced law.
And do you recall if he had any board experience?
No, I don't recall him having any chair. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess for the sake of completeness, I think you did say that those in respect of whom you recall something additional to what is here, you will mention, but if you don't mention anything, it means you don't remember.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And then we have Mr. Themba Nkabinde, His Actual General Nkabinde, has an MBA and a military junior degree as well as project management. And I had known of General Nkabinde from my time at AMSCO. He was in the Department of Defense and had retired by the time he was appointed here as a director. So that's where I knew him. So he was He had recently is a lieutenant general, so he's quite a well-experienced general. If I may put it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Ms. Kumbutso Nshaveni, she has an MBA and Labor Relations Development Studies and Political Sciences is her space. I really didn't know much about her. Later on, I got to know that she had worked at CETA, for instance, the State Information Technology Agency, as well as she had been exposed person at some point for the ANC in Limpopo, but I didn't really know much about her. And that completes the list, Chair.
Mr. Tlakudu, can I then take you back to page 8? Because on page 8, you set out the role you played or tried to play in advising the minister on whom to consider for the incoming board. If you could just talk us through that very briefly.
And maybe either in the course of answering that question or at some stage, I would like you to go back to looking at this board and looking at what the department used to do before this board in identifying possible members of the board to be appointed, and what guided you, what used to guide you before, and be able to say, normally as a department, we would have made sure that at least the following featured in any particular board, and whether it was featured here. I know you have already said there was no chartered accountant in this one, and that was a matter of concern, but there may be other features that the department used to look for, to say in a board for Denel, at least one, there must be one member of the board who has got this kind of qualification or that kind of qualification, and then the others maybe we can see, but these are essential. We consider them to be important. So at some stage, if you can talk to that as well. But for now, just answer that question that Ms. Kabash has put to you.
Chair, the compilation of what I'll call a long list is informed by a number of considerations, and it's a process that legal and governance is the custodian of. Now, myself coming from a sector unit, my role, because I work with the entity on a regular basis, I go through their quarterly reports, monthly reports, I engage quite extensively with the executive, would be to identify, and also, we evaluate the strategy evaluation would be our, so we'll have to, in a way, have, as a sector, have a sense of where the business is going. For instance, with regard to Denel, there was a strategy, good to great, where, in fact, at some point we had we challenged the executive committee, and we were saying by 2020 you must get your turnover to 10 billion rands, because we believe that they could do that, and in fact they were on track to achieving that until the changes of this board happened. We would, with that insight, we then consulting obviously with looking at the board members that are there, collective, as a collective, with look at the board members that are there and say where should we, which skill in a way has become redundant now on here, who can we remove, and then put, and what will inform that would be there's a database that the department maintains. The database, every so often the department goes out and invites people who would like to serve on our boards to submit their CVs, which they would do, and
so you actually place an ad in the papers?
Place an ad, yes, in the papers.
Yes.
And that exercise had been done in October 2014 to refresh our database. what we'd do is then we'd go in that, informed by the skills matrix, then we'll say how many, for instance, for a board like Denel's, you'll say you need a chartered accountant that will chair the audit and risk, and that's obviously someone that also has to be quite experienced. You maybe need another chartered accountant on there so that person has a sound board, and maybe that's a person that also can become can be trained up. May not be as experienced as the chair of the audit and risk committee. You would say we need maybe a lawyer, one or two on here. We need someone who can chair the human resource committee, which sometimes called the nominations committee. So typically someone that has HR or social sciences background to come and chair that. You'd say maybe we need one or two engineers on this board, or people from the scientific background to understand technology development, have a sense of manufacturing, because it's a manufacturing business. You would say, it is Denel, we need some military person on here. This person should be able to act as a liaison to the DOD fraternity, obviously in support of the board. But also what tends to happen as well is that because you're selling weapons to militaries and governments, when they come here, it's always good to have someone who speaks their language. So those are the considerations you'll go after. And obviously you'll say, who can chair this board? You'll tend to look for someone who's experienced, who has a board experience behind them. And if I may, counsel, is also referred to the current board, the one that we have today as we're sitting here. We have Ms. Montla Hlahla, who's the chair of Royal Bafokeng Holdings, who also used to be the CEO of AXA. And today we see, AXA it's a world-class organization. It has operations in Brazil. They're running an airport in Brazil, and in Mumbai as well. They have helped in the development of that airport. And so that's the caliber of people that I can even refer to ESCOM. We have Mr. Jaguma Buza, who was the chair of Telkom. So you look for that kind of person who's bringing that kind of experience, because directing a board and leading an organization, it's a tough task. So ideally, want someone who would have that. So those are the considerations, and in doing so, we also are cognizant of the fact that we need to spread the pool as well. There must be what I'll call developmental directors, those people that have good executive background and now have availed themselves for board, they've not served on board, so you put them on. So they learn from others. But they must have solid background of achieving things. That's what you want. If you look at the Transnet board today, we have a few young people in there. We have a young engineer who happens to have been the CEO of Mercedes-Benz Fleet Management Company. So this was the first time it was put on a big board. So those are the steps. So we'd prepare that long list that would put to minister, and then she can run her process of getting the necessary concurrences from political counterparts, and then obviously then it comes back and into the department, and normally be discussions as well with the minister on this, where she obviously get feedback. This is what I've been, and you expect one or two what I'll call political appointments onto these boards, and the previous board that I've referred to, you had those kind of appointments on there. And do you understand that's the reality of politicians and being in the political space? But ultimately, what you would want, you want to end up with a board that collectively has the capability to run the business.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for.
Can I then ask you to explain to the chairman how different the experience of appointing...
Maybe we should take the lunch break.
Oh, indeed, Chairman. We'll come back to that matter
Yes.
after lunch.
Yeah, let's take the lunch break. We'll resume at 2. We adjourn.
All right.
Now the evidence is flowing.